there's a song, "You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm amazed by you." That song, even saying it right now, brings tears to my eyes because the word father brought so much pain for me for so many years. I'm like, how can you be a good father if my earthly father did this to me? What does a good father look like? And so God had to take me on this journey and say, "Lauren, I'm nothing like your biological father. I am your good heavenly father, and I want good for you and love and grace." And that was the journey that God had to show me.
Testimony goes on and on and on. It's magnetic, it's prophetic, it's got stories being told.
Welcome back to the Jesus Magnet podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and today we have Lauren Burns with us on the show. She is the host of the Redeemed podcast. She lives in Texas, has two amazing sons, and is a full-time in the medical industry. Is that right?
Yes, I'm a physical therapist.
Physical therapist, awesome. So I'm happy to have you on the show, Lauren. I'm keen to hear all about your testimony and just kind of what God's done through your life. So yeah, how you going?
I am great. And Joel, thank you so much for having me on to share with your audience my story, because I felt like God was telling me, "Lauren, get out there and share what I've done." And I'm like, okay, but I don't know how. And then God just keeps opening these doors. So thank you for hosting me today.
You're more than welcome. I mean, more testimonies, the better. The cool thing about your whole background is you're the host of the Redeemed podcast, which does amazing testimonies and all about how people are redeemed through Jesus, which is awesome because that's the same as what we do. And it's just cool because, I mean, you and I would be able to talk for hours about the different guests that we've had on our shows and how God continually shows up even when you just don't expect it. You think that there's no hope left, and then all of a sudden Jesus enters the room and everything changes, and it changes for a lifetime. So, I mean, the amount of stories that I've had on this show, I find it so hard to not believe in God now. Like, it would be real, because there's one thing of having your testimony and how God's changed your life, but when you've heard countless other testimonies, it starts getting really hard to doubt God can do anything now. We still somehow find ways to doubt him, but he constantly proves me wrong anyway. But yeah, so
well, I think that's why God gives the scripture, right? In Psalms 107, 2-3, "Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story from the east to the west, those that have been delivered by the hand of the foe." And there's power when we share a testimony. There's power when I share, God fills me up, but then there's power for the person listening. Yeah. And you know, Joel, I'm sure you feel the same. I feel like we're coming into the years that God is calling his people. That, you know, like I said, I'm a physical therapist, and I'm a mom, and now I'm like on podcast and writing a book. I never thought I'd do these things, but God is calling his people to get out of their comfort zone and to share his truth and his story of what he's done in his life and their lives. So that's what we're doing.
So good. So good. Well, let's get into it. Tell me about your testimony. What's where did it start? At the beginning, I suppose. But.
Well, it starts at the beginning, but I really felt God calling me today, and he put this on my heart, so I want to share it with your audience. When we realize that we can do nothing without Jesus, that is when Jesus does everything for us. We have to be at the end of ourselves. We have to get our eyes on him and be broken and humble and let him do his work, and we got to get out of the way. And that's what you're going to hear today as I share my story. My childhood was such a hot mess, Joel, that there's a movie made about my life. NBC made a movie called Desperate Rescue, the Kathy Mahone story. When I was 6 weeks old, my parents were already in the middle of a divorce. And so my childhood was broken from the get-go. My mom is from Florida. My dad is from Jerash, Jordan. Jordan is near Israel. They met in Dallas, Texas. So yes, my father was Muslim, my mom was Christian, but she was like 19 and 20 years old and didn't really care at that time. Just thought he was cute and wanted to get married. And so that didn't really work out for them. 4 years into their marriage, my mom was pregnant. My dad actually left and went to Jordan and told my mom that he had to take care of his sick father. My mom thought nothing of it, but weeks turned into months that he was gone. And Joel, I was their first child. My mom was in her young 20s, alone in Dallas, and began thinking that he was never going to come home. Well, when he finally came back, my mom went into labor 6 weeks early, probably because of all the stress of what was going on. And my father looked different. He was wearing the traditional Jordanian clothing. He told my mom that he actually went to Jordan to make a home for us. He had found a job. He had found a place to live. And my mom freaked out. She was like, we never talked about moving out of Texas, let alone the United States. And no, I do not want to raise our daughter in Jordan. And so she started going through the filing process of getting a divorce by the time I was 6 weeks old. After that, my life was pretty normal. I was going between two homes. My mom had full custody of me, but my parents actually got along really well. My dad remarried and had more children, so I got to be an older sister to my little brother and my little sister. So every other weekend, I'd go hang out with my dad, and he was very loving. We had a great relationship. I call him the Disney dad. Like, we did all the fun things together on the weekends. And anytime my mom needed help, he was willing to keep me longer, and vice versa. But everything changed the year that I was 7 years old. In 1987, it was Halloween weekend. My dad asked my mom if he could keep me one extra night to go trick-or-treating. And my mom said, sure, no problem. Just make sure you get Lauren to school on Monday. I don't want her to miss school. My dad's like, yeah, no problem. So, he comes to pick me up, and I remember, as I've been sharing my story and writing a book, I have a box with all of the newspaper clippings and the magazine articles and my mom's journals and actual cassette tape recordings of phone conversations, and I have pictures of me in my Halloween costume. I was a cheerleader that year, yellow and blue cheerleading costume. My mom put my hair in pigtails. I was super excited to go trick-or-treating with my siblings. And my dad gets there to pick me up, and I get in the car, and it's only him. And so I'm like, where's my stepmom? Where's my siblings? And my dad said, well, I have a surprise for you. We're actually going on a big trip. I'm going to take you to Jordan so you can meet your family that you've never met. Well, I start asking questions. I'm like, well, Mom never told me we were going to Jordan. She said we're going trick-or-treating. And I didn't pack enough clothes, and I just start asking all the questions. And my dad's like, don't worry. She didn't want to mess up the surprise. Don't worry, Lauren. She knows everything's fine. You'll see. Well, Joel, the more questions I asked, the more upset my dad got. And so I finally just stopped asking the questions as he drove to the airport. And that Monday, looking back as I dig through my story, I can see God's handprint in every single part of my story. My mom worked full-time. She was a single mother. And for those of you who know what it's like to have young children, it's hard for you to stop your day and go have lunch with your kid at school. Like, it's almost impossible. But on this Monday, I always say, but God, my mom decided to go have lunch with me. And she went to the school. She went to the courtyard. And as all the kids are lining up to go to school, she's scanning and she doesn't see me. And the teacher comes over to my mom and said, Kathy, Lauren never came to school today. And my mom's like, what do you mean? And the teacher said, well, your ex-husband never brought her. Well, the last thing she said is, make sure you get Lauren to school. So she was mad. And this is in the 80s. There's no cell phone. So she goes to the closest payphone and she dials my dad's house, and no one answered. My dad and his brother owned a restaurant in Dallas. And so she called the restaurant, and then they tell her that my dad never showed up for work. So now that anger becomes fear. And at that payphone, her third phone call, and Joel, this is totally the Holy Spirit leading my mom every step of the way. My mom remembers going to Jordan 9 years before this happened. Before they got married, she had visited Jordan and met my dad's family. And she remembered that the main airlines into Amman, Jordan, was the Royal Aliyah Airlines, and their headquarters was in New York City. So she called the headquarters, and when the lady answered, she said, "Do you have a Lauren and a Ollie arriving in Jordan?" And the lady said, "Ma'am, I can't give out that kind of information." And then my mom said, "Please, I think my ex-husband has taken my daughter. Can you please help me?" So the woman came back on the line and said, "Yes, ma'am. I have a Lauren and an Ollie arriving in Amman, Jordan this evening." Joel, that was the moment my mom knew that my father had taken me.
Whoa.
The fourth phone call she made at that payphone was to Beverly and Rick Lambert. And Miranda Lambert is a big-time country singer-songwriter. You may be aware of who she is. But at the time, she was only 4 years old, and Beverly and Rick were my mom's best friends. Many of you know that sometimes your friends can be closer than family. And Bev and Rick, that was my mom's rock when things went south. And Rick Lambert was a police officer in Dallas, and at this time he actually had a private investigation company with his wife called Lambert and Lambert. So she called Rick, paged him 911, and Rick and Beverly, I interviewed them on my podcast. They actually were working together at the county courthouse, working a case when the page went through, and Rick went over and grabbed a phone and said, "Kathy's calling me 911, something's wrong." So she dialed the number back, and my mom begins to tell Rick that my father had taken me and I was about to land in Amman. Rick and Beverly jumped in their car. They drove to my mom's townhouse, and that's when everything in my mom's life started to unravel. Fear and anxiety, her worst nightmare, was coming true as I was beginning a new life in Jordan with my family I had never met.
Oh my
I didn't know how to speak Arabic.
Can I ask a few questions on your father?
Of course you can. Yeah.
He was living in the States and just decided to up and leave he would have had a life here as well, that he was just up and leaving. He didn't even tell his job that he was leaving.
Correct.
Yeah?
Yes. So my stepmother was pregnant with her third child. And my father told me that the reason my stepmother could not come is it was too dangerous for her to fly. But really, he had sent her and the other children away outside of Texas. They were visiting more other family somewhere else in the United States. And he had told her, "Why don't you go and stay with your family so you can have a little vacation because you're pregnant, and I'll stay behind and work and spend some time with Lauren." He did that so she wouldn't know what he was doing.
Oh, wow.
And so he had planned all of this. He bought a car, and he had a car shipped to Jordan. He did a lot of things without anyone knowing. So he had been planning this all along. What we found out was the law in Jordan, I don't know if it's like that now, but when a child turns 7, all rights go to the father. My birthday is in September. He took me in October. So he had been planning this, knowing that there's nothing, my mom could do to get me back. Because her having full custody of me in the United States doesn't matter whenever you're a Jordanian citizen and you're a man and you take in your child.
Yeah. Your Jeez. So your dad has this whole thing planned out, but he has other children as well with your stepmother. Was he planning to do this when they turned 7 as well?
He was planning that my stepmother, because my stepmother is from the Middle East, a different area, but he was planning that she would give in and she was going to come with the rest of the children, and he was going to have his whole family in Jordan and raise all of us in his custom with his family and his tradition. Because of Rick Lambert, The first thing Rick told my mom is go to Radio Shack and get a recording device and put it on your phone. So every time you call Jordan or you call one of Ollie's family members or you call the police, we can go back through and listen to the conversations because your emotions are going to be a wreck and we need to be able to listen for clues of where Lauren might be. Well, Joel, because of that, I have all of those cassette tapes. I have spent many hours listening to them, which was very hard to do. And I've heard the conversations with my stepmother and my mom and my dad. And I know what was in his mind is he thought that my stepmother would just give in. And my stepmother every day is saying, I'm not Lauren's mother. I'm not the one to raise her. She has a mother. You need to bring her back. This isn't right. I'm not going to come to Jordan until you bring her back.
Wow.
And he was just kept saying, well, you're never going to see me again. I'm not bringing her back. And he just assumed that she would give in and finally come because she didn't have a job. So financially, he knew that she would rely on him. So there was a lot of manipulation going on there.
So you were basically kidnapped and taken to Jordan from the States. How long were you there for?
I was there for three months. By the grace of God, it was only 3 months. Most children don't ever come back. And if they do, it's a year, 2-3 years. And the longer you're gone at a young age, there's probably a better word to say than brainwashed, but you're just, it's hard to overcome. Even within 3 months, I was just speaking Arabic.
Yeah, you're basically institutionalized to,
yes.
Kids are so adaptable, you know, like, oh, okay, this is home now, so I'll just make it work, you know, in my mind. I'm also with my dad who loves me, and
right.
And now you would have your grandparents over there and all that. But yeah, that is those 3 months. Can you remember how you felt? Because you would have known, you would have missed your mum terribly. Do you remember much of that time of like the emotional, like, where's my mum?
It's very foggy. When I look back at my past, it's like I'm talking about someone else's life. And I think that's probably normal when you've been through a traumatic event, especially at such a young age. But certain smells and sounds will trigger my memory. It was a culture shock. My father was very traditional. So they sat on the floor to eat dinner you wash your feet, you take your shoes off, wash your feet, you sit on the floor. They didn't have utensils. You eat with your hands. You use pita bread. You scoop up the hummus and you take the rice and you just sort of shape everything into a ball. And so that was very different of how we ate. Going to the bathroom was a hole in the floor with a chain above. They did not have toilets. They did not use toilet paper. So you would clean yourself with your hand. For a 7-year-old little girl from the United States, that was traumatic for me. Many times I would wet myself because I did not want to go to the bathroom. Speaking Arabic, and my aunts and my grandmother, they were really the ones that took care of me. The biggest thing I remember was, where is my dad? In the United States, my dad was always there, brushing my hair, getting me ready for bed, reading me bedtime stories, very involved. But there, it was different, and I didn't know why, that the men were not really allowed to be with the kids. It wasn't their job. It was the women's job. We would go to the mosque to pray. I thought I was praying to Jesus in a different language. I didn't know. And so the men would go in one area, and I didn't know why I couldn't go with my dad. And then women would go with another, and for some reason, we had to pray on a prayer rug. So it was there was so much change going on. I realized that there was a difference, but I didn't know why. I didn't understand the rules and the culture. And so that was a lot of the things I was going through. And I would ask, when can I see my mom? And the more I asked, my dad would get mad. So I could sense that he did not want me to ask about my mom. And so then I'd ask about my stepmother. At least if I had my stepmom with me, that would be comforting. But even she wasn't allowed to come. And so then I asked, can I talk to my mom on the phone? And then my dad just kept pushing me off until finally one day I was allowed to talk to her. But he told me, you cannot tell her anything. bad about my family. If your mom starts asking questions about where you are, hand me the phone. So I knew I was very guarded on the phone because he was standing there listening to our conversation. And then, of course, he did the same thing with my mom, saying, don't try to get any idea of where Lauren is. Don't say anything bad about me. Don't say anything to scare her. So it was a very tense conversation. And listening to the cassette tape, I can barely even recognize my own voice.
Far out. That is insane. Did you get any comfort in, you said that was it your auntie and your grandmother that they were very nice to you? But
oh yes,
I'm sure. I mean, my question is everybody on the same page? Like, yes, we've kidnapped this child from her mother. Yes, she's our granddaughter or our niece. But are they on the same page with what your dad's done? Like, are they in agreement of that? Or, yeah.
That's a great question that I can't answer. I have the tapes. I don't understand Arabic. Maybe I could use Google Translate to help me. A lot of the times they're saying, Ollie's not here, Ollie's not here, because my mom is calling day after day. I'm Lauren's mother. Let me speak to Ollie. Where is Lauren? And all you hear on the other end is mainly Arabic, and they're saying, no, Ollie, no, Lauren. But my mom knows that I'm there. And eventually she's able to talk to someone that can speak enough English to help her. And my mom's crying and begging, please bring Lauren back. I will not get Ollie in trouble. I will not, prosecute him. I just want my daughter back. And then the women are usually the ones answering, and they're like, it's okay, Kathy. You'll see. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then my dad gets on the phone and tells her, well, maybe in a year you can come and visit. She just needs time to adapt. It's too soon for you to come for a visit right now. And so I can't explain to you what the rest of the family was thinking at that time.
Far out. That's like, I mean, I'm sure that's shaped how you view your father from that point, because you were there for 3 months. Actually, I need to ask this. How did you end up getting released? Like, did you sneak onto a plane? What happened?
So let's get into that story. That is all about Jesus. So like I said, it was day after day. My mom calling Jordan, and Rick and Beverly are calling the police. They're calling everyone they know, and everyone is saying, we can't help you. You're not going to be able to get your daughter back. It's out of our jurisdiction. I'm sorry. Day after day, the State Department phone calls, everyone. And so my mom is just going deeper and deeper into fear and anxiety. And all of us know what that is like whenever you're facing a hard situation, a diagnosis, a divorce, a loss of a child, you name it. Our mind goes out of control. And so my mom's not eating. She's not sleeping. She's just getting deeper into this area of fear. And Rick and Beverly had actually moved in with my mom and Miranda. Miranda's like 4 years old at the time. They moved in with my mom. They were staying with her day and night, helping her try to figure out what to do. And on this particular day, I know that God wanted me to have this phone call recorded because Beverly calls my mom, and I have it on a cassette tape recording. And Beverly tells my mom, Kathy, you have got to get away from all of the noise and the chaos, and you have got to be alone with Jesus and start praying. And my mom just starts crying and saying, yes, you're right. And Beverly, will you pray over Lauren? Will you pray that God will protect her, no matter if she's in the streets of Jerash or if she's in a mosque, that God would protect her? And Beverly starts praying over me, this powerful prayer. And then Beverly said, Kathy, I read a book that talks about fasting and how fasting brings you the closest to God. And my mom just starts crying and said, you're right. I've got to get away and I've got to fast and pray, and I've got to stop smoking these cigarettes. My mom had smoked cigarettes for years, but at this point she was smoking 2 cigarettes at a time, like all day long. And when I share this, I'm not saying smoking is going to make you go to hell, but she was running to the cigarettes instead of running to Jesus.
Yeah.
And so my mom agreed, and she said, you're right, I've got to get away. But before my mom could do that, Rick Lambert had made an appointment with my mom to go to the grand jury in Dallas, Texas. thinking that they could at least get a warrant out for my dad's arrest. So if my dad tried to come back into the United States, maybe they could capture him and then figure out where I was. So Rick drove my mom to the meeting, to the appointment, and my mom walked into the meeting and stood before the grand jury and told her story of my father taking me, and that she had full custody of me, but my father was a Jordanian citizen. Well, they told her, I'm sorry, ma'am, there's nothing we can do to help you. And then my mom was like, can I be real with you? This is not fair. It's not fair that we spend billions of dollars in foreign aid and you're telling me you can do nothing to help me get my child back. And everyone on that jury room began to shake their head in agreement. And Joel, one man stood up and opened his wallet and said, my name is Al Zapanta. Here is my business card. If you're not happy with the State Department, give me a call and I'll see what I can do. Well, if you've been in a really dark place, you know that sometimes God can be giving you a light in the middle of the darkness and you can't even see it. And so my mom took that card, put it in her wallet. She walked out, and Rick said, Kathy, how did it go? And my mom's like, they can't do anything to help me. And then she got back to the townhouse, and Beverly saw how depressed my mom was. And Beverly said, well, can they do anything for you? And my mom was like, no, they can do nothing for me because the United States does not have a treaty with Jordan. So my mom grabbed her Bible and grabbed her suitcase and said, I don't know where I'm going, but I've got to get away and just be alone. And Beverly said, don't worry. We will handle it. If someone calls, we will screen the phones. We will take care of things here. You just go. So she got in her car and she drove towards Fort Worth and found a little motel room. And she stayed there 3 nights fasting and praying. And Joel, on that 3rd day, God gave her a scripture verse in Daniel. And this scripture verse is when Daniel is praying over the Israelites. And Daniel had spent 21 days fasting and praying. And the angel Gabriel came to Daniel in chapter 10, verse 12, and said, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard. God was saying, Kathy, I see you. From the first moment you stepped into this motel room and you took your eyes off the situation and you put your eyes on me, I heard every prayer. But you're going to have to lay some things down. You're going to have to lay down those cigarettes and any areas of bitterness and unforgiveness. You're going to have to lay them down at my feet, because the Bible talks about how the prayers of the righteous are heard. And if you're holding that anger and that unforgiveness, it's going to block those prayers. And so it's like God was wrestling with my mom in that room. And just like in Daniel, it talks about the angel Gabriel told Daniel, I heard your prayers on day 1, but there's a war in the heavenlies going on over the Israelites. And the same thing, there's a war in the heavenlies over my life. And so for the listener listening that maybe you've been praying for a long time and you can't see what God's doing, don't give up, because you never know what God is doing. My mom walked out of that motel room and she went back to the townhouse, and Beverly answered the door and she looked at my mom and said, you don't look the same. Wow. And my mom said, I'm not the same. God told me I'm going to get my daughter back. You know how you just have that glow about you and that heaviness is gone?
Yeah.
So Joel, she took that card out of her wallet and she called Al. Al Zapanta is a big deal in the military. He still works in the political world. He began to tell my mom 1 week before that jury duty at the grand jury that my mom went to, 1 week before that meeting, Al was in Washington, D.C. with a man by the name of Everett Alvarez. Everett Alvarez is the second longest held POW from the United States. He was held for 8.5 years. Everett Alvarez was telling Al about a group of men in North Carolina that were ex-military Green Beret, Army Rangers, and they had just started a company called CTU, and their mission was to go to the Middle East and rescue hostages, rescue people that had been taken. They also did a lot of private security for some of the big movie productions like Rambo and Iron Eagle 3. So they knew Israel, they knew the Middle East very well. You can't tell me, like we were talking about earlier, that there's not a God. Yeah. God was orchestrating every step before my mom even went to that courtroom that day.
Man, that's insane. And so,
yes.
Yeah, so how did you actually, how did they end up, the courtroom ended up favoring?
No, the court did nothing. It was these ex-military men. So my mom said, I want to meet these men. And Al said, Kathy, they are not a part of the military anymore. So if they do a rescue mission, the United States cannot help you. You are risking your life and they are risking their lives. Yeah. And my mom said, I don't care. And then he said, it's going to take a lot of money to do this. You're going to have to, spend a lot of money to pull this rescue mission off. And they've never rescued a child ever. This would be the first child that they've ever tried.
They're basically mercenaries.
And so my mom, yes, that exactly. Wow. And so my mom said, I don't care. I want to get in touch with them. So she flew Dave and Dawn into Dallas and they met, and my mom shows up and she's got all the photos of me and my dad's family. She had the maps of the city. She had everything prepared, and they were blown away by how prepared and serious she was.
Yeah. And
so they said, yes, we will do this mission. And they said the same thing to her, but it's going to cost a lot of money and we cannot guarantee your safety. And we've never tried to take a child before. And my mom said, I don't care. So my mom went to Washington, D.C. to try to get a passport for me because she had to have a passport and visa and entry stamps, all that, right, without having me with her. And then Dave went to Jordan trying to figure out how to find me. Was I really in Jordan? And try to locate my dad's house and then try to find an escape route out of Jordan. Because like you said, do you put a kid on the plane? The answer is no. You have to find an escape route out of Jordan. So Dave was there for weeks trying to find me, and he could not find me. He found an escape route, but he could not lay eyes on me. So he called JD and Dawn and had them come and try to find me. And they spent weeks, and they were working off of a visa, so time was running out. So they're in the streets of Jerash day after day looking for me. And I have olive complexion skin, I have darker hair, but I have bright blue eyes. So that was sort of the distinguishing feature that they were looking for. And when I interviewed JD, by the way, since I started a podcast, I've reconnected with the men that rescued me, and I've interviewed all of them. That's what God does when you say yes to doing crazy things like starting a podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
So JD talks about the day that he saw me in the streets of Jerash. He was all over the place. They were in the ruins. They were all over the marketplace. And JD said, Lauren, I did everything I knew how to do with my expertise. And then I started praying. I was like, all right, God, I can't find this girl. You're going to have to help me find her. And he was standing on the street, and Dawn was a couple feet away from him, and a school bus pulled up. And JD turned and looked through that school bus window, and there I sat, and I stared right back at him. So JD got excited and ran over to Dawn and shook him by the shoulders. And Dawn was like, what is going on? He goes, I just saw Lauren. He's like, what do you mean you saw Lauren? He's like, I saw Lauren on that bus. I saw her eyes. And then about that time, the bus pulled away. So they lost the bus, but at least they knew I was in Jordan. So then they called my mom. At this point, my mom was in Cyprus. My mom was waiting to get word of that they had found me. So they called my mom and they said, Kathy, we have located Lauren, but we cannot find Ollie's home. These photos you've given us are old and dated. We need you to come to Jerash. We need you to fly into Amman and help us find the home. So my mom flew into Amman, and Joel, at this point, she was so excited. This was the closest she had been to me in 3 months. And she was very confident that she would be able to remember where my dad's home was. But as they start to drive her into the city, that fear started coming over her again because nothing looked the same. The dirt roads were now paved. The small little buildings were now big. They build one building on top of the other. Nothing looked the same. So as Dawn is driving and JD's in the back, my mom got down in the floorboard of that front seat and began praying out loud with her eyes closed. And she just started praying and crying out loud. And she's like, God, you haven't brought us this far and these men this far to not even find the house. You have to help us find the home. And my mom said, without ever looking up, it's like the Holy Spirit started guiding her and showing her exactly where to go. She began to remember the turns in the road and how the hills went up and down. And she began saying, turn left, go straight, turn right. And then she looked out the window and she saw my dad's car sitting with Texas license plates on the street.
Oh, wow.
And she froze. And she finally was able to say, Dawn, I saw Ollie's car. And so Dawn said, Kathy, hide your face. I'm going to turn back around. And when they turned the car around, Dawn saw my dad walk out of the building. So that's how they found the home. So just to recap, nothing happened until JD started praying on the street, and that's when he found me. And then my mom is praying in that car, and that's when they found my father's home. It's like God was saying, I want y'all to know who's in control here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
So,
okay.
So they decided, yeah.
Yeah. Walk me through this next part, because this is like the confrontational, you're meeting your ex-husband, and you've got these basically Rambos around you, and what happened?
Well, so they kept driving. When Dawn saw my dad come out and come back in, the last thing they wanted is to be recognized, because that would be horrible.
Yeah.
And so they decided that the house was too dangerous of a place to get me, because it was in a crowded area. It was right next to a police station. So they decided the best way to get me was to hijack the school bus. That would be the safest thing, because they started watching the school bus every day.
Yeah.
And they saw that the school bus had one stop on the outskirts of town. There's a little farmhouse that was further out from the city. So they figured that would be the best place to get me. So the day of the mission, the code word was the sun is shining. But the sun was S-O-N, not S-U-N. The Son is Jesus.
Yeah.
And that code word came from one of the men's wives. Her name's Judy Feeney. And she said, make sure Kathy knows that the Son is Jesus. My mom had never even met Judy before. And so it was just another confirmation that God was saying, I am with you, Kathy. I'm not going to leave you. So the day of the mission, there was 2 cars. Dave Chatelier was in one of the cars, and then Dawn and JD and my mom was in another car. Dave's job was to watch the house to make sure I actually got on the school bus that day, because you don't want to hijack a bus without me being on it. So as soon as he saw that I got on the bus, he drove to the other car and he let them know that, yes, Lauren is on the bus. The mission is a go. As soon as the bus passed the other car, Dawn drove up and blocked the school bus in. And he got out of the car and he went over to the driver's side and began speaking English to distract the bus driver. JD went over to the passenger, that accordion style door to the bus, and he pried the door open. He got the keys out of the ignition and he threw the keys into some bushes, hoping they would go looking for the keys instead of going straight to the police. And then my mom got out, and they're all in disguise. My mom's hair is covered. She spotted me on the bus and she went over to the window. And Joel, this is a part of the story I will never forget. There's a lot of things I have forgotten, but she went over to the bus and she tapped on the window and she starts motioning for me to get off the bus. Well, at that moment, I froze. I was staring at my mom, and all I could think is, it looks just like my mom, but how can it be her? My mom's all the way in Texas. This can't be real. I have to be dreaming. And so I froze and I would not move. So my mom got on the bus and she's pushing her way past all the kids, and she picks me up. And as she's getting me off the bus, there's a woman chaperone on the bus, and she jumps on my mom's back. So my mom has to let go of me, and she turns around and she punches the woman in the nose. And now this woman is bleeding. So now I'm really freaking out. And so they get the lady chaperone off my mom and they get me into the car, and we all get in the car and we drive off. And about 2 blocks down the road, we switched cars with Dave. So now Dave is taking the car that we just used to hijack the bus. And he drives back to the city as a decoy, hoping that he'll draw their attention as we are making our way to the border the Allenby Bridge, which is the King Hussein Bridge, over the Jordan River into Israel. That was our escape route. On the day of the mission, my mom had made reservations for us to fly out of Amman, Jordan, back to the United States, hoping that the military and the police would go looking for us at the airport. The military, the Jordanian military, pulled Dave over, pulled him out of his car and started ripping apart his car looking for any evidence. They even brought the bus driver over to him, and the bus driver in Arabic is saying, yes, that is the car, but I don't know who this man is, because remember, Dave was not there.
Yeah.
And so he's just acting like a tourist. He's just speaking English, asking about the ruins and things like that, and they are interrogating him for like 30 minutes on the side of the road. Well, all of a sudden, and I interviewed Dave on the podcast, all of a sudden, while they're interrogating him, he hears on their radios, Aliyah Airport, Aliyah Airport. Those men left Dave on the side of the road, and they all got in their cars and went to the airport looking for me. They shut down the whole airport looking for me.
Whoa.
And that's how Dave was able to escape.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, because they would have arrested him and...
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. And to hear him tell the other parts of the story of how he actually left was a whole nother amazing story. And all of these men are believers. All of them have like, Lauren, it's only by God, the grace of God that this happened. He's 80 now or 85. He's like, I've thought about your story over the years, Lauren. There's so many things that we did wrong, but God. So as we're driving, so all that's happening and we're driving towards Israel, and the fog was so thick that it was a 45-minute drive, but we had to go slow because you could only see like the front of the car. And my mom is holding me in the back seat and she's praying because we know at any minute we could be captured. And as we're driving, my mom looks up through the window and she's like, what is that bright light in the distance? And Dawn said, well, Kathy, that's the sun. The sun is shining over Israel. Like, of course it is. And so my mom just, she's like, of course you're with us, God. Like the sun is shining over Israel. That is our escape route. That is our promised land. So we get to the border, and back then you couldn't drive your car over the border. You had to leave your car on one side, get out, all the paperwork and passports and entry stamps, everything my mom worked so hard to get, we had to hand it over and get onto a bus. And as we get on the bus, we wait there for like 30 minutes. And there are big fences with barbed wire. There's big guard shacks, towers with soldiers and machine guns. It is a very secure border. Oh. Dave and Dawn and JD had gone through every inch of that border. They knew how dangerous it was. And so they're on high alert thinking, if they realize who we are, how are we going to get out of here safely? So the bus cranks up, we start to drive, and in the middle of the bridge between Jordan and Israel, there is a guard shack where an Israeli soldier and an Israeli bus driver, they get on and they take you on over into Israel once you cross over the border. So right after the Israeli soldiers get on our bus and we start to drive over the border, there's a big commotion behind us. They had just shut down the airport looking for us, and they realized that we weren't at the airport, but we were at that border. But Joel, by that time, it was too late. There's nothing they could do because we had already crossed over into Israel, and they couldn't do anything.
Wow. So
we get off that bus. My mom is hugging me and crying and kissing me, and all those emotions start to come, and I'm crying. And there's a group of women there, and they go over to JD, and they tap him on the shoulder, and they said, is that little girl okay? Is the woman okay? What's going on? And JD, with big tears in his eyes, begins to tell these women what just happened. That I had been gone for 3 months, that my father had taken me, and they had just rescued me out of Jordan. And those women began to jump up and down and said, well, praise you, Jesus. We've come to the Holy Land, and we have seen a miracle. And so they come around and start praying with us. And it's just every part of my story is God. And if you watch the movie Desperate Rescue, you're not going to see that. And that's really why I feel like God's calling me, Lauren, it's your turn to share what I did in your life, how I brought you out of Jordan, and how I have redeemed your life and restored your life, because it's only through him.
Oh my gosh. So this is an actual movie that's been made based on your story?
Yep. Yes, it's called Desperate Rescue, the Kathy Mahone story. You can find it on YouTube. It's old. It was in 1992. I think they might still play it on Lifetime. I'm not sure. But my goal, Joel, is I want to redo. Like, I want to share what God did.
Yeah.
Because
Come on.
that's what people need to know.
Yeah.
Like, we face some hard things in life. You don't have to have a kid kidnapped to know what it's like to live in fear and anxiety and hard things. But if we can keep our eyes on Jesus in the midst of the storm, if we can trust him and take our eyes off our situation and get into the Bible and get around people, like Beverly pointed my mom back to Jesus. We need those people that are going to point us back to God. God can do some amazing things. He's a big God.
That is incredible. I mean, it's so... Actually, I do have a few questions.
Yeah.
But I'll say it's really strange that like this is your story. From my end, like the timing is so definitely God. This weekend, I'm going for an outreach just for a couple of days to a very, very remote part of Thailand where there's refugees, and basically there's hundreds of kids that have been abandoned by their parents because they're from Myanmar, and their parents have illegally brought their kids over from Myanmar to Thailand because kids under 18 they can be classed as an illegal, but there's no reparation for it. There's no laws condemning them until they're past 18. So you're legally allowed to be an illegal under 18 in Thailand. But their parents have to leave them. Their parents are illegal, so it's kind of similar to your story, where how your mum would feel leaving this child or their child in a different country. Although it's backwards, because they're in a different country with the hopes that it's better for them, because there's this big war happening in Myanmar at the moment. And when you were sharing your story, and I'm thinking, like, just last night, my wife and I, we were talking about the deepness of how we get so comfortable in our lives, and we can step into, like, this outreach that we're doing on the weekend. I can step into the lives of these people very temporarily and then remove myself as if nothing happened. And people say that you can get a taste of it, but you can't, because it's so foreign to me. Even a taste isn't really what it is like for these kids. And you're sharing this story about basically the same thing, very similar. And I'm about to go experience that this weekend. I just find that the timing of your testimony impeccable, and really, really affecting my heart. I got a question on two things. If I rewind a little bit to when you got to Jordan, you mentioned your mum needed to get you a passport. How did you get into Jordan without a passport?
Well, my father had a passport. So back then, in the United States now, both parents have to be there to get a child a passport because of stories like mine. That's why that law is there. But back in the 80s, it just had to be one parent. So my father had a passport for me, so that was easy. But if there's already an active passport being used, that's a problem.
Yes.
So that was a whole nother story. My mom had to go to Washington, D.C., and Al helped connect her with a lot of people. That was a lot of praying. My mom said one of the most stressful parts of the whole story for her was getting that passport.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay.
But that was the problem, if that makes sense. I already had a passport being used.
I see. So you kind of ended up having two passports. I mean, your dad's probably still got your old one somewhere. At what point, when your mum punched this other person in the face and got you off the bus, at what point did you realize this person didn't just look like my mom, this was my mom?
I went into shock, Joel. So, and the guys trained my mom before the mission, and they prepared her, and they said, if Lauren's acting weird, if she has fever, if she doesn't speak, all of that is normal because this is going to be very traumatic. And that's exactly what happened. I was burning up with a fever. I wouldn't speak. And when I spoke, my mom said for 3 days, I only spoke Arabic. And then finally, it took time. I slept with my mom until I was 12 years old. It was just my mom and I. And every night, that was my safe place. She slowly would ask me questions little by little, and I would begin to relive things that I went through in Jordan. And we would sort of piece the puzzle together on what had happened, because I had to change my last name. We moved about 14 times before I even got to high school. We lived in hiding in fear that my father might try to get me back. And so it was a lot of years of healing and that, and you know, you talk about the kids' lives that you're going to be going to ministering to. My biggest struggle, Joel, was the word father. Because when you read the Bible, you know, God is our Father, and it's written over 200 times in the Bible. And there's a song, "You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm amazed by you." That song, even saying it right now, brings tears to my eyes because the word father brought so much pain for me for so many years. I'm like, how can you be a good father if my earthly father did this to me? What does a good father look like? And so God had to take me on this journey and say, Lauren, I'm nothing like your biological father. I am your good heavenly father, and I want good for you and love and grace. And that was the journey that God had to show me. And so for the person listening that's had a hard childhood, I would say put your trust in Jesus, because that word father can bring so much love if you let him heal those wounds.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That makes sense. I mean, my father's amazing, and I couldn't imagine having somebody that you like you had a great relationship with your dad before all of this.
Yeah.
To have that all twisted, very, very much twisted over the next 3 months of being abducted and far out. What's your relationship like now with your father? Is it existent? Is it, yeah.
We tried. So, you know, and my mom is a great example of showing me forgiveness. Like, she led by example. My mom never wanted me to regret not knowing who my father was. So she sort of pushed me to write him letters, even when I didn't want to. So my father would write letters to my grandmother, who lived in Florida. That way he didn't know where we lived. And then he would address it there. And then my grandmother would send it to me. So we did this whole, you know, secret hiding thing.
It's clever.
And so we would go back and forth with letters, which that was hard, Joel. Every time I got a letter, my heart was racing. I didn't know if I wanted to open it, and it brought back all these emotions I had to deal with. And I wanted to know who my siblings were. Like, I wanted to know them. What did they look like? What did my dad look like? I had all these questions. So as I got older, we talked on the phone, and that was hard. My mom was sort of forced me to talk to him. I'm glad she did, but it was hard. It wasn't easy. I had to deal with fear and anxiety, and to hear this man that really was a stranger to me by now calling me baby and pushing. He was very pushy, wanting me to tell him I love him and to call him dad. I couldn't say the word dad. That word was painful for me. So then in my middle school years, I actually saw him for the first time. My mom remarried, and my stepfather went with us, and I got to see him. It was in a crowded public mall. We were still being cautious, and that was hard, but my siblings came, and that made it easy. And then into my high school years, Joel, he actually came to my high school graduation. I went to a small little high school in Lindale, Texas, where I actually lived with the Lamberts for about a year. My whole town knew my story. He came to my high school reunion. My mother invited him to our home and cooked a meal for him.
Wow.
We had a meal together. Yeah, I mean, that is forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
We were past the part of fear. because I was older. But so I really tried to have a relationship with him in my college years. We tried, but I really believe, Joel, my father could not ever admit what he did was wrong. I think in his eyes and in his religion and his tradition and his beliefs in his mind, he thought what he did was right. And so I think that's why we could never mend. But my stepdad passed away in 2018. He was an amazing father. And Joel, 6 months later, I had not talked to my biological father in years. And it's just funny how God works. 6 months later, my father tracked my mom down and got her phone number off the internet and called her. And I walked into my mom's house, and my mom said, "Lauren, your dad called today." And it startled me. And I said, "What do you mean my dad called?" Because my dad was my stepdad, and he had just passed away. And he said, "No, Ollie called." And my heart just began pounding again. And I said, "What?" He's like, "Well, this is his phone number. He's getting a little bit older. He wanted to reach out and see how you were doing." And she said, "This is hit the phone number. Do whatever you want." Well, Joel, I've learned over the years, before you do anything, you pray and you pray and you pray. So I put that phone number in my pocket, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And one day when I was driving, because that's the quietest part of my day with children, is I was alone in the car, I pulled out that phone number and I dialed it. And I heard that voice that made my heart race. And I really felt like God was saying, "Lauren, this is your chance to just sort of close that door with your dad." And so I told him, I said, "I forgive you for what you did. I no longer have anger towards you because I believe in Jesus. And Jesus died on the cross for my sins. So who am I to hold any anger against you? I forgive you, but I don't necessarily want a relationship with you." And then I began to tell him, the man that raised me, the man that walked me down the aisle on my wedding day, because Joel, for years I was afraid, will I ever have a dad to walk me down the aisle? That's what little girls think about when they don't have a father, by the way.
Yeah.
And who's going to be there whenever I have my first child? Who's going to be there when I graduate college? Who's going to be there when I graduate high school? That man, my father, recently passed away, but he was a good man, and I want you to know that I was loved by him very much. It's like God was just giving me that chance to close that door. And that's just freeing for me, that healing journey.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's exactly what people need to know. Is I like how you said that when you said to him, you said that you forgive him, but you don't necessarily want a relationship with him. And that can be, I think, a stumbling block for a lot of Christians when they hear the forgiveness part. It's like forgive and forget, but it's not. It's forgive, don't forget, but forgive. And you handled that perfectly. And I love how the grace of God has been able to comfort you through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
What about your extended family? Have you been able to, like your grandmother and grandfather and all that will be in Jordan, has there been any sort of connection outside of just your biological father? Has there been any connection to your grandparents or anything like that?
Not them. I never really remember having a relationship with them at all. They've always been in Jordan. I'm not sure if they speak English or not. But my stepmother and my siblings, yes, I'm able to speak with them and to reach out to them. And anytime they've had questions over the years, because for many years they never knew why I wasn't in their life. My father never told them. But I had the opportunity because they reached out, and I said, "Well, if you want to know, there's actually a movie about what happened." I mean, how do you say that to someone? Isn't that crazy? Because he never told them. And that made me mad, to be honest, Joel. Like, so I just looked like the person that wanted nothing to do with it. Who knows what they thought all these years? Of course he didn't tell them.
I think you're the first person I've ever met that's been kidnapped to a different country. That is... I can't even wrap my head around it, you know, like, Do you remember any memories being in Jordan that were joyful, that you're grateful that happened? Anybody that you met that you ended up being friends with, or food or anything?
Food. So I was going to say, like, your senses is what really kicks in. I remember feeling very safe in the streets of Jordan. I remember being able to run around on the streets in the evenings, and it's like there was no crime. At least that's what I remember in the 80s. I remember the food was amazing and fresh. There's olive trees and lemon trees, and we would get fresh falafel from the street vendors and hummus, and there was always a big family. Family was huge. My father had a big family, and I loved that. Big parties and birthdays and celebrations, and everything was about people and family, and they'd have sweets and hot tea afterwards, and we would go out to the rooftop and the men would smoke their hookah pipe. I may have said that in the wrong way, but it was a lot of people and gatherings, and so those are good memories that I have.
Yeah. Wow. What's some advice that you would give somebody that's struggling to confront or to talk or to forgive somebody that's violated them in a way like this?
Well, one, you have to be safe. So I went through this journey. Like I said, I didn't see my father until I was older, and we knew that I was in a safe place, and he wasn't going to try to take me or couldn't take me again. So that's number one. Number two, forgiveness does not mean forget. Because how would I be able to share my testimony if I forgot? And how do you forget something like that anyway? So exactly. I don't know where we came up with that, because I struggled with that for many years. Forgiveness doesn't mean that what the person did was okay. Forgiveness literally means, God, he is yours. I am placing him at your feet. And him, I'm using my own example. And my job is to let him go over and over again. And the Bible says, is it 70 times 7 is how many times you're supposed to forgive, because God knows it's not easy. Over and over and over and over again. And for the person dealing with, it might be easier because my father's so distant from me. He's not in my life. But the person that maybe they have that person in their life still, and I think about like an ex that's dealing with custody battles with a child, you still have to deal with the person. But even then, God can bring you through. And trying to speak good things instead of negative things and continue to put it before God. God, is this too big for me? And he's like, I know it is. And let him take you through the journey of forgiveness.
That's so good. It's so interesting. Your journey with people back in the States when you got there, has there been any sort of counseling or anything that you've had to go through? Because you were young. You were 7 years old. I mean, when I was 7 years old, my dad had a major car accident, so I was a similar age, and he lost his eye and was brain damaged, and arm was degloved and broke his neck and his back and both his legs, and it was really horrific. And my mum says that I'm the youngest of 4, and my mum says that I sort of grew up with a different father, because his whole personality changed. And I love my dad. Like, he is amazing in so many ways. But I had this traumatic event that happened when I saw him get pulled out of the car wreck, all bloody and everything. And when I look back on my life, I probably should have had some counseling from seeing something like that at that age. Interesting that you and I were the same age when something like this happened.
That is interesting.
And, so I didn't have any counselling. My oldest brother definitely should have had counselling. He was actually in the car with him. And I think it's something that would have helped, and he's admitted this these days. But, how about you? Is that something that you would find really useful? Does everybody need counseling if they go through something like this, or is it more, because trauma can affect people in different ways? Kids especially adapt so well, so what would traumatize an adult if the same thing happened? Kids are often more adaptable, that it doesn't hit the trauma, that they kind of don't realize this is not normal, so it doesn't create the trauma. That's what I've been told anyway. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think a couple things. I think counseling is good. I think not all counseling is the same. And so to find the right person, the right fit for you. Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is don't just think that the first counselor wasn't good and nothing's going to work, because just like physical therapists, I mean, you've got to find the right fit. For me personally, I went to counseling when I was young, but really it was when I lived with the Lamberts in Lindale. I lived with them for a year in the house that built me. It's one of Miranda's famous songs. I lived in that house, and that is where my healing began. I got involved in life group. Life group is at church. It's little small groups. Beverly, Miranda's mom, led our life group, and we would meet in small houses with small groups, kids my same age. I was 15 years old, pouring my heart out with my peers. It was totally God-given. I felt comfortable to start sharing. It's like peeling an onion, those layers. I began to tell the girl sitting next to me that I was so jealous of, and her name's Julie. I share this story all the time. I would look at Julie, the beautiful blonde cheerleader that had her parents, both her parents together, that were always married in one home, deeply jealous of her, even though I loved her, because I wanted that family. I wanted that life. I didn't want my hot mess of a life, even though it was a movie. I'd forget the movie. I'd rather have that life, right? And I began to share those wounds, those father wounds, and that jealousy and that deep hurt and that questioning of, is God really good? And as I began to share, all of my friends began to cry with me, and they began to share things. And then I realized they're not perfect. Like we look at social media thinking, no, they don't have it all together. And as we share, it brings healing, and it opens up other people to be able to share. And so my counseling was that life group with God at the center and us praying over one another. That is where my healing journey really began.
Oh, I love that. And that's so true. You know, like you said, you struggled with the word father for a long time. I can understand that. Do you think that this event, this whole thing with your father has affected you in other ways? Like some people, if they have a traumatic upbringing with their father or their mother, they struggle to actually trust men in general, like sort of like one bad apple just spoils the rest sort of thing. Has that ever happened to you, or it was mainly just particularly to the word father? Or did you find it tricky to, like your husband, did you find it tricky to start trusting him before, when you were dating?
You know, I think God protected me from that. There was many years, my middle school years and high school years, I was longing for the love of a guy to fill that void, even though I had a great stepfather. And so I struggled with that, those insecurities. But I think God protected me. I never had to struggle with security or safety issues. I always trusted my husband. So I think God just protected me with all those people praying over my life all those years. That was one thing I didn't have to deal with.
Awesome.
I'm grateful for.
That's good. That's so good. It's good to hear that, you know, one thing didn't ruin everything, you know, that God really protected you in so many different ways.
Yes.
So your faith, obviously you've had it since such a young age. You even thought that when you went to the mosque you were praying to Jesus, but everybody was praying in a different language. Has your faith ever dwindled at any point, or is this you've kind of had a constant faith from this young age and it's just built stronger and stronger?
Oh, it's dwindled. We'll be honest, right? In my middle school years is when I was going down the wrong path. My mom had gotten married to my stepfather. He's amazing, but he took up a huge space in my mom's life. And that was all for me. All these years I'd had my mom. It was just the two of us. Yeah. And so I struggled. I really struggled, age 12 and 13 and 14. And that's when Beverly said, hey, something's going on. Lauren does not look like she's going down the right path. I didn't. Like, I sort of shared how my mom had that glow about her. Well, I didn't have the glow anymore. And so, I was sneaking out and I was doing all the wrong things. And so moving to Lindale was a great place for me. But, we can all know that we can know God in a huge, mighty way, but we can also get off track. And that's what the enemy does. And he pulls us off track. And so I got off track for sure. And what I have realized is if I am not in a steady group, a life group, a Bible study, a women's group, if I'm not plugged in, I will go off the rails. And so for me, I have to be in that community. Like, I do Bible study every Thursday night. And when I had our first child, I really felt like, okay, I got to get my life back with God. And being consistent in God's word, praying, reading a Bible, reading scripture, doing a Bible study, that's what keeps me focused. Because it doesn't matter how well you know Jesus, if you're not plugged in all the time, the enemy's going to distract you and pull you.
That's so good. I love that. I mean, I don't know where I'd be if I wasn't plugged in. I love how you put that. It's more than just going to church, but like throughout the week, go to Bible studies, discipleship, anything that's discipleship training. It's that's what we're called to be as disciples of Jesus. So that's awesome. Man, is there any final things that you would like to share with our listeners before we finish up this episode? It has been a wild journey. Like, I want to go watch that movie now. And, so you are actually writing a book. We'll touch on that.
Yes.
Is this book on your testimony, or is it something else?
It is. So I'm writing the full thing. I'm writing from, what our life looked like before my father kidnapped me, the day of the kidnapping, details. It's really cool because I've interviewed all the men that rescued me. I've heard things I've never heard. My mom is learning, listening to all these cassette tapes. It has been a journey digging in, and I just see God. The reason I'm writing the book is I want people to see Jesus, because you're not going to see it in the movie. And then the last half of the book is going to be my journey of redemption, of healing from those father wounds, me living in Lindale and what that process looked like, and coming back to God and God healing all of that in my life, because you won't see that part either. You're going to see us get to Israel and then boom, done.
Yeah.
So that's my hope for the book. But I would like to share a scripture verse. I love scripture verses. I have it in here somewhere. Isaiah 43. But now this is what the Lord, your creator, says, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they will not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be scorched, nor will the flame burn you. It doesn't matter what you go through. It really doesn't matter, because God's going to be with you. It's going to hurt. It's going to be hard. It's going to be scary. But if you can keep your eyes focused on Jesus, who knows what the outcome's going to look like? I don't have a relationship with my father, but guess what? Until my father, as long as he's still alive on this earth, God's not done with him yet. God's heard every prayer I've ever prayed over my father. I have prayed over him since I was 7 years old that he would know Jesus. And that could still happen.
Yeah.
And that relationship could still be redeemed, but I don't know what that's going to look like. And so for your listener going through some hard things, keep your eyes on God and get into a community of people that can pour into you.
So good. Wow. Well, thank you, Lauren, so much for joining us on the Jesus Magnet podcast. What a wild story. Please keep an eye on the description below of this episode, and when Lauren's book is published, we're going to make sure that it is in the description below, so you can click on that link at some point, maybe now, maybe in a year's time.
That would be great.
Yeah. So thank you, Lauren.
Come on, let's get that done.
Yeah, let's do it. There's a bit of pressure for you.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lauren, for joining us on the Jesus Magnet podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Jesus Magnet podcast. If you enjoyed this, make sure that you connect with us. Find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and if you want to support us, be a member of our coffee club, Jesus Magnet Coffee Club. See you next time on the Jesus Magnet.